Hello my friends, welcome to my channel, Lindy's Magpie Reads. This is the place where I talk about books. I read a lot and I have got 8 books that I finished recently to tell you about. Some of these are leftover from readathons happening in April still. The Picture This picture book readathon, because 3 of the books that I've got are in picture book format and they are about people, a biography and a couple of autobiographies in picture book format. So this is also a holdover from People April. And May is Asian Heritage Month. So I've got, I think, 3 that fit into that celebration of Asian heritage. And what else is happening in May? Springathon is going on right now until May 19th. Oh, the Grey Wolf Press celebration of 50 years anniversary, and that's called Grey in May. So I'll be talking about that later on. And before I get to those books that I finished recently, some bookish news. Sad news first. Alice Munro has died at 92 years old. She is a Nobel Prize laureate for literature and one of Canada's best known writers. I adore her short stories. I have a couple of anecdotes to share with you, and one is the time that I got to hear Alice Munro read from her new work at the time. It was The View from Castle Rock, and this was for the Vancouver Writers' Fest. It was a Sunday evening at Stanley Theatre in Vancouver, and I think she read for an hour or more, and it was mesmerizing. It might have been 2006, something like that. Anyway, still a highlight for me of the Vancouver Writers' Fest. And another memory has to do with my work at the library, and I remember a patron coming in and slamming down a book of short stories by Alice Munro. I can't remember which one, but she opened it to the back, to the author photo, and she said to me, "She looks so sweet, doesn't she? She has a filthy mind." Anyway, yeah, I guess her stories aren't for everyone, but they're special to me. And sad to hear the news of her death. And in other bookish news, the winner of the Carol Shields Prize has been announced. V.V. Ganeshananthan for her book Brotherless Night. I'm so pleased that this is a winner. I think it's a fantastic book, and I highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. I talked about it in a previous episode, which I will link down below. But I will also link the Carol Shields Prize information down below, and you can find out all about that book, the shortlisted books, the long-listed books. They're all written by women and non-binary writers from either Canada or the US. So, on to the books that I finished, starting with a big fat one that I've already returned to the library because there was a waiting list. It's Beyond the Page by Quentin Blake. Quentin Blake was born in 1932, and he is a well-known, well-loved illustrator throughout the world for his illustrations of characters in Roald Dahl's books and books by Russell Hoban, Joan Aiken, and Michael Rosen. He's won so many awards, including the Whitbread Award, the Kate Greenaway Medal, the Hans Christian Andersen Award for illustration, and things that I learned from this book, that he has worked large. He's got installation illustrations that are on the walls of buildings or several stories on the outside of buildings. And he's done a lot of work for hospitals. And in this book, he talks a lot about his artistic process and his spiky kind of style. He uses a hard nib and ink to do his illustrations. It's so iconic, recognizable, and I was so glad that Jack of Spread Book Joy mentioned this title when we had our conversation. It was, I will link that down below. It was a live event, especially for the Picture This readathon. It was a group of us adults talking about why we love picture books. So if you've missed that and you're interested, look for a link in the description box down below. And next are the picture books that I mentioned. The first is a biography, One Wish, Fatima, al-Fihri, and the World's Oldest University. It's written by M.O. Yuksel and illustrated by Mariam Quraishi. Fatima al-Fihri was born in about 800 Common Era in Tunisia, and her family migrated to Fez, Morocco, and as an adult, she played an important role in the advancement of education and civilization because she founded the world's oldest university. It's the oldest existing and continually operating educational institution in the world, according to UNESCO. Very inspiring story about a Muslim woman from history and how her legacy continues to this day. And next is the picture book Adrift at Sea, a Vietnamese boy's story of survival. It's written by Marsha, Forchuk, Skrypuch with Tuan Ho, with illustrations by Deines. And this is the story of Tuan Ho and his family escaping Vietnam in 1981. It's their dramatic departure, their time on a boat, and being rescued by an American aircraft carrier. And eventually they came to Canada. And the third picture book is by a Gwich'in author, Julianne André, written together with Mindy Willett, with photographs taken by Tessa Macintosh. It's called We Feel Good Out Here. And she writes about her early childhood on the land in the Northwest Territories. And then Julianne attended residential school and lost fluency with the Gwich'in language. And now her whole family is learning Gwich'in again, and it's really important to her to continue with her culture and language, living in the community of Gwich'in. I'm not sure how to say it. Gwich'in. There are a lot of details in here, including maps and Gwich'in words and some traditional stories and how they connect to the land. You get a lovely feel for what life is like for this indigenous family. Next up is another Indigenous author. This one is Darcie Little Badger, who's Lipan Apache. Her novels are a combination of contemporary fiction and but set in an alternate Earth. Set in Texas, and the first one was Alatsui. Well, this one that I'm telling you about, Sheine Lende, is called Alatsui number 0 because it's a prequel and it's about Alatsui's grandmother. So her name was Sheine Lende, which means sunflower. Everybody calls her Sheine, and she and her mother work at retrieving missing people. And in this story, 2 people go missing, and it has to do with a fairy ring, and they haven't been transported somewhere on Earth. They're somewhere farther than that, somewhere beyond Earth or in a different time. So there's some major searching that needs to happen. But Sheine has a ghost dog to help and other ghost spirits that she can summon. And it's a fun adventure story. You don't need to have read Alatsui first, but yeah, I think it would be a good idea to pick up Alatsui first before reading this one. And the audiobook, by the way, is read by an Indigenous reader. She's Deines. It's Kinsale Drake. But if you pick up the print edition, there are illustrations by Rowena Kai that are also beautiful. Well, the cover is done by her as well, and you can see her flowy, delicate sort of style. Lovely. And next up is the Book of Japanese Folklore. It's subtitled An Encyclopedia of the Spirits, Monsters, and Yokai of Japanese Myth, and it's by Teresa Matsuura. And the author reads the audiobook. So she has a podcast, Uncanny Japan, which I haven't listened to. If you're familiar with it, please let me know in the comments. But what she's done is taken all kinds of monsters that you might have encountered if you read any Japanese fiction or watch Japanese anime, because these are the creatures that pop up often. The kitsune, the fox that can transform into a woman, the fox with 9 tails, or the tanuki, the raccoon dog, who's an actual wild animal in Japan, but also a supernatural being in mythology. She talks about Momotaro, the peach boy, and Kappa, the sort of turtle-like creature that has a bowl on its head. Hiramigoto, the Canadian author, has written a story called Kappa Child that draws on that myth. Anyway, it's the kind of book that would be nice to have for reference. If you have a paper copy, there are illustrations in the paper copy. And if you read a lot of Japanese works, you might like to have this to refer back to. I did seriously consider whether I needed a copy or not. But I did enjoy hearing more about these different creatures and where they can be traced back to, what's known about when they started appearing in Japanese culture, and so on. Well, that one was a celebration of Asian Heritage Month, and so is this one. It's called Stories of the Islands, and it's by Clara Angkasa, who is of Indonesian heritage. And these are 3 stories based on traditional Indonesian stories, but she has given them a feminist twist. The kind of stories where women save themselves instead of relying on a man to do so. It's in graphic novel format. There's a different color palette for each of the 3 stories. The colors are rich and yet with a very elegant palette. Yeah, and there's some more. They're definitely feel-good stories. They're suitable for about grade 3 or 4, all the way up to adults. Definitely an all ages kind of title. And I thought it was fabulous. And last up, my favorite of the bunch is this very short work of nonfiction, The Living Mountain by Nan Shepherd. I did this as a buddy read with Natalie over at Curious Reader, and we read it for Springathon, the nature writing readathon that's happening right now. And it's considered a masterpiece, and I know why. It was originally written during the time of the Second World War, and Nan Shepherd spent her whole life in Scotland near the Cairngorms, and that's what she's writing about, the mountains, her experience of the mountains. And it is so full of all the sensual details of not just what she sees, but what she hears, what she smells, what she touches. It's so rich that even though the chapters are really short, it took me quite a while to get through each one. I kept going off into daydreams, actually. I think because of all the senses that were being evoked, I just kept thinking about other things. And there is a bit of an existential quality to this writing as well. Thinking about how humans are connected to landforms and plants and animals and insects on our planet, and asking the question, why are we here? So yeah, Natalie and I haven't finished talking about this book yet. There's so much to say, but it is pure delight. There is a long introduction by Robert Macfarlane, and then there's an afterword by Jeanette Winterson. And I know this is going to be a book that I return to, and I'll get more from every rereading. So, this might be my top book of 2024. We'll see. I really loved it. And I have picked up other books for Springathon as well. I will continue reading nature writing. I do love nature writing. One of them is The Outrun by Amy Liptrot. I've only read the first couple chapters so far. This one is set in the Orkney Islands. I've also been reading about trees in Around the World in 80 Trees by Jonathan Drury. Fascinating trivia about trees. If you love trees, this is a good one. And I've made just a bare start in this new book by Jessica Lee. Now, she wrote Two Trees Make a Forest, about investigating her family's roots in Taiwan. And this one, Dispersals on Plants, Borders, and Belongings, it's a collection of essays that are about non-native plants and how they found places in other parts of the world. And I think she's making correlations to people who are migrants to other places in the world as well. I'm not sure, but I know that her writing is dreamy, and I am very much looking forward to reading further into Dispersals. And then one last book to mention. I picked this up for Gray in May, 300 Arguments. It's by Sarah Manguso. Gray in May, the Grey Wolf Celebration. There are some group reads, including Sarah Manguso's Ongoingness, which I had read previously, so I decided to pick up something else by her. And it's these really short little aphorisms, and they are perfect for just reading a few at a time, like inner beauty can fade too. And the trouble with comparing yourself to others is that there are too many others. Using all others as your control group, all your worst fears and all your fondest hopes are at once true. You are good. You are bad. You are abnormal. You are just like everyone else. Be your best selves, everybody. Thank you so very much for watching. I do appreciate hearing from you, so say hello in the comments down below, and I will leave you with a few scenes from the trees that are blooming around here. Right now it is the hawthorns and the red horse chestnuts. So enjoy. I'll see you soon. Happy reading, everyone.